This is these are the digital resources for Norton. Right now, I'm looking at the We the People textbook. This is for American government, and it's offered for at least high school, perhaps college as well. So I wanted to talk about this book, and particularly the left-leaning tendencies of this book. So if you look into foundations, you can look at politics here, institutions, and policy. These are all pretty good, and this is again a preview, so you may not be able to see everything right here, but this looks like a pretty good chunk of the text. Anyway, so let's start. Let's look at civil rights here. This kind of jumped out at me because it's talked about foundations, and it just puts civil rights right there, and didn't seem to be part of foundations so much because of the civil rights movement happening almost 200 years after the founding of the country. So I wanted to take a look at this, and wouldn't you know, I just got all of a sudden it has a Black Lives Matter picture. I mean, this is just insane. And by the way, this is publicly available on a trial. If you just about anybody could get a preview. This is all a preview and what they make available. So now the thing is, it's not bad that it's talking about Black Lives Matter, of course, but I am rather concerned that it seems to be, it's just at the beginning of the chapter, and it's not like a sidebar thing, especially because we don't really know where this is going right now, since this Black Lives Matter movement is not really that old. So in a history class, it's very odd to see. It's not so odd as a current event, of course, but just as a chapter heading, and that's a picture for the chapter. It just seems to really emphasize that just because of the juxtaposition here, that Black Lives Matter is civil rights, and that it's legitimate. So seems to lend legitimacy to this movement. And Black Lives Matter is essentially a terrorist organization. It is a racist organization. We see in their description. I remember going over this, and I was thinking to myself, okay, what does it say about it? And it really gives a positive things in it shows this movement in a very positive light. The Black Lives Matter movement has gained momentum in recent years in response to highly publicized incidents of excessive police force against African Americans. So that may see, it says in response to. So it's saying that that's actually, it's claiming that's a fact. And that's the problem here. If you look at the statistics, it's not excessive police force. A lot of times these are criminals who are being violent. It's not so much that these police are after these African Americans. It's they're after criminals. So if there's a majority of African Americans that are committing crimes, it's going to make police force against them a little higher, of course. But we see a much less number of police force against Asians. So it leads me to wonder, why are we talking about that? If that's going to be, if we're going to talk about the numbers and how often police are using force against who, and we would have to see all these groups and everything, and just it's very, very skewed in this way. Of course, supporters of the movement have charged that the police are inclined to use particularly harsh tactics against minorities. So now it says charged here, and then some critics. So some critics have replied that asserting that all lives matter. Well, of course they do. But, and then it says the Black Lives Matter protesters maintain. So, I mean, it's just obviously spun in a way favorable to the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's just one of the things that was just a cause for concern. So if we go back, we can also look at, this is interesting, political parties. Okay, who do we see? Bernie Sanders. I mean, it's like, really? I was wondering if they're talking about how Hillary Clinton screwed over Bernie Sanders and how he supported her anyway. This would be kind of interesting. But it seems like the person that is editing these texts maybe likes Bernie a lot. I don't know. It wasn't like he was elected, but seems like they're really into Bernie. The presidency, and I like how it has these, updated stories. The problem with textbooks is that you just get outdated so fast, and it seems like Norton gets updated stuff quickly. It's just interesting, they have this, and it's a good picture. It's a great picture. But then again, it says, when Donald Trump succeeded President Barack Obama as president in 2017, he inherited numerous challenges, but also a presidency more powerful than the institution imagined by the founders. All of a sudden, Donald Trump's the president, and it's too powerful. It's too powerful. And look at this. Barack Obama could look back over his 2 terms in office and reasonably claim that he achieved a number of the goals he had set for himself. I mean, that may be true to an extent, but I thought he talked about lowering the ocean levels, I believe, and that didn't seem to happen. So, it's really funny. And then it talked about this Iran deal. I mean, actually, it says that in this agreement, ending economic sanctions against Iran in exchange for Iranian promise to slow development of nuclear weapons. They didn't. I mean, it says that it remained highly controversial, but it doesn't really talk about that. I mean, yeah, of course it's highly controversial, but they don't seem to mention the fact that Iran did not even comply, and that this was a terrible deal, and this is spinning out as some kind of success, and it's obviously supportive of the left and the leftist agenda here. And the thing is, there's just no way to really do anything about it, because these people at Norton control all of this, and they could put anything in there that they want. I want to show you something about, I think it's on the civil rights. There's different pages you can go on here. There's civil rights and women's rights. It's about gender and stuff, and he mentions transgender. Here we go. This is really interesting, the earnings stuff. I mean, it doesn't, I know it's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but just really doesn't factor in the fact that women have different goals in life, generally speaking. It just doesn't seem to take it into account. I mean, obviously students can and teachers can and discuss it, but I mean, there's obviously a message here that they are trying to send with the types of graphs they give versus other kinds of graphs that they could give, such as the maybe the proportion of unarmed white men that are killed by police. That's actually a larger proportion than are blacks being shot. And Cesar Chavez, of course, he's lionized here. Cesar Chavez was he had UFW workers report illegal aliens because they would, of course, break strikes and things like that, and they worked against what Cesar Chavez was trying to accomplish, but of course they're never going to report anything like that. Of course, he's lionized here. He talks about the DREAM Act, DACA, and you can see that this is supposed to be a textbook. This is not like an article. This is actually Norton's textbook. This is what students are supposed to read. They're required to read this kind of stuff. And it's just so leftist. I mean, it's just such an agenda. In less than 50 years, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer movement has become one of the largest civil rights movements in contemporary America. For much of the country's history, any sexual orientation other than heterosexuality was considered, quote, deviant. In many states, criminalized sexual acts considered to be, quote, unnatural. So already here, it's feeding a certain viewpoint. It's giving the students a certain viewpoint. Gay people were often afraid to reveal their sexual orientation for fear of reprisals, including being fired from their jobs, so on and so forth. It's not that I am against them mentioning this kind of movement, but certainly the spin that is shown here, that's obviously given here, a certain attitude. Look at how it mentions about the lighthouse being lit up. I mean, we know that Obama himself ran against same-sex marriage when he was campaigning. He said that he does not support this. But then, of course, he has the White House lit up in rainbow light. I mean, it's obviously celebrating this, and it doesn't have to do that. I mean, it can talk about it, of course, because it really did happen in the United States with the Supreme Court ruling, but there's just no need to celebrate it, as it seems to be doing. And in this map, too, it seems to show a certain spread, maybe, of same-sex marriage being legalized. And I think maybe the idea is to talk about maybe students are supposed to try to see how well these other countries are not getting with the program, and so on and so forth. And then, disparity in high-speed internet. It's just kind of funny there too. It just mentions just a little bit down here. In civil rights into our future. And the thing is, it's not a bad thing to have students involved in civil rights, of course. And I think certainly a very important civil rights issue right now is the freedom of speech for conservatives in college campuses. They're simply not given those rights. Think about Milo. There's also the issue with Charles Murray, with a professor who was accompanying him, and that professor was attacked simply because she had invited Charles Murray to speak. I mean, this is just insane. And the issues with Berkeley and Ben Shapiro as well, with them demonstrating and disrupting and threatening violence, to where they had to cancel appearance by Ben Shapiro. It's just amazing that they would do that, but I don't see this in the text at all. It seems to be arguing in the liberal side as to this argument concerning quotas. Liberal response is this, and so on and so forth. These practices underscore liberal argument that affirmative or compensatory action for minorities is not alien to the American experience. I mean, it's just obviously, it just shows the leftist agenda, plain and simple. The election of Barack Obama as the country's first black president in 2008 raised questions about whether the United States' racial problems have been solved and whether policies such as affirmative actions were still needed. What was it? It's supposed to heal the nation, right? That's what Obama was supposed to do. We saw the worst divisions in this country's history because of him. It's just beyond me why this textbook company is not even talking about that. This was the most surprising thing of all. Not just this graph here, just the juxtaposition, the American Revolution with everything here, with just calling all of this civil rights. I mean, it's just crazy. The American Revolution with the whole gay rights, so-called gay rights movements. I mean, LGBTQ. It just puts that right in with everything else. With the American Revolution, this so-called gay rights movement and black rights movement. I mean, this Black Lives Matter movement, as just put with the Black Civil Rights Movement, all of that just put with the American Revolution and the abolition movement. It's all put in the same kind of thing. Really? This is not true. It's just not comparable. You can't just put those two things together. You can't put same-sex marriage with the American Revolution. It just doesn't. It's you just can't put all that together, right? And then the feminist movement is funny because you have feminists, but you have this whole transgender thing too. Well, what does that make? What does that make women? It makes just okay. Woman is somebody with what, breasts and heels or something like that. I mean, what is that? What does that mean anymore? And then down here, it's interesting. Advocate your position on civil rights. It directs students to government websites, which is fine. Make a phone call to voice your opinion. Let's see. It seems like it's given students their opinion in this chapter here. It's given students what they want them to think, right? And it's like, okay, call the White House now. I mean, seriously. What was really just a salient feature of this whole thing, it really stood out, was this website. It directs students to change.org. I mean, this is a left-wing site. Change.org. Let's look at it now. I mean, yeah, let's look at their blog, because this is anybody could have a any kind of anybody can post a little thing on here, right? But let's look at the topics. Tax bill, Donald Trump, net neutrality, and mass shooting, healthcare. I mean, these are all left-wing issues. These have been left-wing issues for some of them for a long time. Confederate monuments, and so you can say to yourself, okay, well, anybody can post any kind of petition that they want. Okay, well, that's fair enough. So let's just look at the blog that this website runs. Victory. Massage Envy announces change of sexual assault policy. Football and the limits of forgiveness. That's the whole issue with these wusses, these cowards kneeling the flag. I mean, they don't even know what they're doing, right? and it's obviously left wing stuff, right? There are nearly 80,000 signatures on a petition to boycott the NFL if Kaepernick does not find work. I mean, okay, this guy's a failed quarterback. This guy's terrible. And so they're supposed to hire this guy? You hire a failed quarterback for what? This is on change.org's blog, by the way. So this is something that the organization puts up in this climate change stuff. I mean, so obviously this is just far left stuff. I mean, gun control stuff. I mean, this is all left wing. I mean, it has nothing to do with anything that the conservatives would be interested in. How about Live Site News? How about that? That's an advocacy website about pro-life, about the pro-life movement. I don't see any pro-life movement here at all. The movement about for women not to kill their babies. The anti-abortion movement. Abortion was started with this abortion kind of thing with Roe v. Wade, and it all goes back to Margaret Sanger with Planned Parenthood and the plan to reduce the black population by having those children aborted, killing babies. That was the goal with Planned Parenthood and with the pro-life movement. That should be here too. I don't see it. I don't see it in this little chart. I don't see Tea Party movement either. That's kind of interesting. So it's just a left wing, labor movement. They have that in there, right? Communists, socialists. So I just, this makes me not want to adopt a text like this. It's just it's a terrible thing. I love the technology with Norton. I think it's great. It really to see the kind of exercises here that they do, it's a game-like experience for students, and they have updated material. They keep things updated for their material all the time. Like especially if there's elections, there's plenty of material there. But sorry to say, they were very, very left-leaning.